I feel like I don't have to introduce myself today because if there's anybody who knows Chinnamma, then they know me, her Chichimma. We're just not an ordinary grandmother and granddaughter. We've been on a journey together. On February 8, 1988, newly widowed, she left for America when her son called and asked her to come help raise his firstborn child. She left everything she knew, her house, her community, the interesting characters coming in and out of our Tarthangadi house, her kingdom, to come here to come raise us. A short 4 months later, my mom was embarrassed to tell her she was pregnant yet again. But Amama did what she always did with any challenge, welcome yet another baby with utter joy, me, her Chichakutti. She talks about how I was the biggest pain to raise, always crying, always whining. If she was going somewhere for a sleepover, I was there. If she was going to church, I was there. My attachment to her began at a young age. She would always tell people, "ഞാൻ എവിടെ പോയാലും ആ കൊച്ചന്റെ മുണ്ടേ പിടിച്ചോണ്ട് പുറകെ പോരും." Being raised by a mama had no sense or order. The house was chaotic, there were kids everywhere, and it was a mess. But when our moms came home from work, as kids were fed, we were showered, and there was a feast waiting on the table. Because that's the skill of a mama. She could give one kid a bath in the sink while she had another kid on her hip and stirring the chicken curry on the stove. Eventually to this mix, we added Cheryl, Mutton, Michelle, and Dana. She said she would get a whole plate of chora and stuff food into any mouth that was open. While other kids watched Disney movies and cartoons, Anna and I were raised by a mama, so we watched Kakoti Kavile Appupantadi and Agashaduda. Even now, she will ask me to play those songs on YouTube because it takes her back to our childhood, a time where our only friend was a mama. As we grew older, we started to adopt her traits. She would talk to us about all our family members. People were often shocked when they ask us who they are, and we're able to say, "You're our Appachan's sister's daughter's son." She made sure we understood the power of Swandam and Bendam from a young age. In the last couple of days, a lot of people have mentioned how much they will miss a mama's hospitality. That too we saw from a young age. Our house was always full of relatives, politicians, musicians, you name it, but her door was open and her stove was on. When I turned 16 and learned to drive, Amama the grandmother became Chinnamma the friend. I would get a call on Fridays that her bags were packed and she was coming for a sleepover. It's really in those car rides when it was just the two of us that we talked the most. She told me all about her childhood growing up in Mundakayam, what her new life as a young married 14-year-old in Tarthangadi was like, and even her early days in America. I learned in these times that for a woman who had taken on huge responsibilities so young, she never stressed and found a way to enjoy life through the chaos. Having to drop her back off on Sundays was always so sad. It's as friends that I learned just how sassy a mama could be. I would tell my friends stories, and of course their response was always, "We see where you get it from." Eventually, her friends became my friends. Kunyamma, Papachi, Leela Amachi, Manga Amachi, Kalluvattankuri Annamma Amachi, Kannampalli Amachi, Palnikkamuriyal Amachi, Attappadi Amachi, Nedigala Amachi, Chutaveli Amachi. I'll miss the quick chats when you guys called for her and the extra hugs I got because you all knew how close we were. Amachi. Losing you two was some of the saddest moments in her life. She spoke often about how deep those friendships ran. Please be waiting for her and fill her in on all the gossip when she arrives. Our relation deepened the most when Amama moved back in with us. She had come back to us and it was finally time for us to take care of her. Chinnamma the friend was now Chinnukutti, Mumukutti, Edi Chinnamme, my child. I took her to all her doctor's appointments, made sure to buy all her favorite fruits. We konjit together. I dressed her up in trendy outfits, did her hair, made funny videos, taught her English, and even scolded her when necessary. Even as my child was aging and needed more help, her spirit was as strong as ever. A couple years ago, we started a tradition. Every night before bed, I go to her and I say, "Ini oru belli arpikkuvan." And a mama goes, "Verumo illo narnjukuda." Then last year, one night, as usual, I went up to her and I said, "Ini oru belli arpikkuvan." And she looked at me and said, "Njan varu." See, she wasn't ready to go. A mama lived for so long because her mind was as strong as her body. I didn't realize just how much of a doting mother I was till she passed and I started receiving messages from so many people talking about how they felt they knew her regardless of never meeting her. As any child with their mom, in the last year, she started to have separation anxiety. If I went to Dallas, she got mad. If I took too long at the grocery store or stayed late at the office, she got mad. One day I came home from a trip and was welcomed with the classic Amama sass. So finally I said, "Enikku oru jeevitham vende?" And she responded, "Venda, nee illade ee veetil oru anakku illa." But Amama, you're wrong. Amama illade nammade veetil oru anakku illa. And that is going to be the hardest thing. A house without a mama. She was our center. She brought everyone together and was our unifying force. See, the biggest debate in this family is who is a mama's favorite kid. But the beauty of a mama is that she had a unique relationship with each of them. Manuchajan was the link to her old world. Being the oldest, he knew older relatives and friends the others couldn't remember, and it brought her much joy when they reminisced about some local chetan or chetati. He also made her a grandmother for the first time. Perappan was the one she respected the most. He helped our family have the opportunities we have today. I recently noticed they had similar journeys. Overwhelmed with responsibilities as parents, they truly enjoyed life after becoming grandparents. Raichayan and her shared the gift of hospitality. Both found ways to always get the family together and have a good time. He also adopted all her Tarthangadi characters and took charge of caring for them when she left for America. Bobichayan and her shared a love for Krishi. Nothing excited her more than getting a box in the mail filled with karyapala and manga. In fact, one of the last things she ate in the world were Bobichayan's mangoes. And then comes Daisy. After all these rowdy boys, she finally got a confidant, her daughter, someone to chat with, and the person she knew would take care of her at the end. Weeks before she became ill, she asked Karthikeyan, "If anything were to happen to me, could you take some days off and take care of me?" Karthikeyan fulfilled her promise. She has stayed at our house for the last 26 days, taking care of her mom. She comforted her, laughed with her, and prayed for her. She held her promise to the end. And then there's my dad, the mama's boy. See, when people praise my mom or me and my siblings for taking care of a mama, know that that's all Jebu. From a young age, it was understood in our house that his mother is the queen and she was our boss. I once asked her who was the most painful delivery, and with no hesitation, she responded, "Ninde appan." Perhaps that's why he spent his life making her happy, showing her off, and always trying to impress her. She always said he was the most like his father. Perappan put it best a couple of days ago. He said, "Jebu and Amama, that's a connection you just can't explain." Next comes Peter. He was her comic relief, always singing some silly song or cracking some joke. Since he lived so close, she always asked for him every couple of days, even if it ultimately ended in her saying, "Ende Peter, ninde naakku vaayilidada." Even in our saddest moments in these last weeks, he made sure to keep cracking his jokes. And And last comes Paulson, her baby. Even as she aged and needed to be cared for, she always still got to feel like a mother when it came to her child, Papi. She was mainly always concerned about feeding him. These 8 different personalities came together because the one thing they all had in common was a love for their mother. This will be our biggest challenge in the years to come. But to keep the legacy for the icon that is a mama, we have to maintain this bond. We have to gather how we have been for the last month. Even as she was dying, she did what she did best, brought us together every night. We wanted her final days to be a reminder of the life she built. Her sons partied, her daughter-in-laws prayed for her and prayed for those sons who partied too much, and her grandkids sang and told stories with her. Now, Mom, this is where you come into play. When her pain got to be too much, and I think a mama knew her time was coming to an end, she asked for my mom one morning at 4 a.m. She held both hands together and said, "Take care of my kids and grandkids." Our matriarch was passing on the torch. She came to take care of your children, and you were able to repay her and take care of her at the end. She gave you the ultimate honor and started calling you Ividattiyamma. It is now your duty to make sure her legacy of hospitality and love lives on. In these last couple of weeks, we were constantly playing the same game with her. Idara, ende perenna. In the beginning, she still remembered us all and spoke. But eventually she spoke and remembered less. While she waited for Allu before she passed away and uttered Matan's name one last time, I felt forgotten by her in those last days. She didn't call for me like she called for others, nor did I get the same smiles from her. But now I get what she was doing. Perhaps she let the memory of me go first so she could prepare for a world without me, and because she knew I needed the most preparation for a world without her. A world where I don't come down and get a good morning from her. A world where I no longer surprise her with Big Macs. A world where I no longer see the joy she gets playing with Bella and Gianna. A world where she can't sing to me. A world where I don't have to sit and pretend like I care what's happening in her cereals. A world where she won't be there when the mailanji on my hands dry. And a world where I won't get to give her a stuti on my wedding day. See? People always say not to cry when old people die. She lived a happy and full life. But in this journey, my grandmother became my child. When the grief fades and the memories of you no longer bring me sadness, but bring us joy, I'll happily say, remember the legend of Mama? Well, she was my grandmother, she was my friend, and she was my child. I'm now going to end my eulogy with the song a mama taught me months ago and requested that I sing at her funeral. If you'd like to join me, it's in the pamphlet.
ദൈവമേ അങ്ങേ സ്നേഹമാർന്നുള്ള കൈകളിൽ എന്നെ നൽകുന്നു നിൻചിറകിന്റെ കീഴിലായി എന്നെ നിത്യവും കാത്തുകൊള്ളണേ നിന്റെ പൂമുഖം കാണുവാനിന്ന് എന്നെ മറ്റൊരു